All right, a good day to you all. Sam here with you on Tuesday, February 20th. And as we do now, when we're deciding what to do a video analysis on, I put it to a vote amongst the members. And one of the choices today was for Litecoin to the dollar tether here. So I've got Litecoin up here. This is on Bittrex to the US dollar tether. I've got a 4-hour chart up here. Now, I've got, this big long correction here, but of course the interest here is what's happening over on the right-hand side. Just a couple of quick points here with Litecoin on Bittrex. It's tempting to look at this and want to go 1, 2, 3, 4. But note here that the low here goes below the low of where it starts. So this is not relevant as a 1, 2. But we do have very technical trading here. I wick that off just as, former resistance, potentially a support zone. And if we as I've shown, we've done this coin before here. So if we go from the absolute low here up to our high, you can see we've come to the 786, this prior, for the same reason here, see prior resistance, a little support cluster there. So we've come down here now, we've put in this low, and so if I pull this off, potentially, right? So not a 1, 2, 3, just a complete recycle. So here's the A, B, C. We finish, and just, again, as I've shown this before, very technical, as you'd expect. Algos are in here. So there's our A wave to our B wave, right to the tick on the target. They got through by a couple of ticks on the B. But there we go, right to target, and then we come back down and try it again. So, a very technical trading market here. I like this. It's not unlike what we're seeing here in Bitcoin. So pulling this off, we're working on the assumption that we have the 5, from our B here, we get a 1, 2, 3 up for the 4, ending diagonal, finishing down here for the 5. Now I've got to open this up more for us to be able to see it. So let me take it to a 1 hour. And we'll look here, and here's that low here. Now it gets a little choppy here. So here's the assumption that we've come into a 1, 2, 3 down here. Up we go for the 4. Yes, we overlap the 1, so we finish with a diagonal down here into this low. Right, so moving off of that, we have a reasonable count. This is very much like Bitcoin, as you'd suspect. Very difficult to count for an Elliott wave trader here to get in here. This is the deepest correction. So I'm working on the assumption that we have this 5-wave structure here. The third was a little dicey, and you could make the argument that it doesn't really matter at this point. I think we can agree that we have a good pivot here for our 1 high, so that is worth wicking off, as I would just force a habit. So if I look at that and say, okay, well, if that's my 1, 2, and I'm working from this low, what do I learn here if I just look? So here's the front run on the 50. So no surprise, you've got algos in. So we're just working from swing low to swing high. We come just a few shy of the 50, and we rip up. Here's the first reaction here. You can see the little pause here at the first algo target. Second, they get all the way to the negative 100, which, as I've shown you many times, is a great eyeball reference, because that will be very close to the 1618. So if I pull that now, just to go through the exercise here for this projection here. So if I take the length of my 1, I project from my 2 low. Well, it's not quite on it here, because remember we stopped just shy of the 50. It's when it goes to the 618 that you get almost a perfect 1618. So here, this is a contender. Now, this is the way I see the count here, is that we're still putting in. See, you could make the case that we have the 3rd over here, and this is the 4, and we're going up for the 5. I don't think that's the case here. A couple of reasons. Because of the good subdivision down here. So you see we get this 5-wave sequence here into this 1, 2, and then we get yet again good subdivision up into this 3rd. So I think we're playing as a 3, 4, 5 here. Maybe there's one leg more here. This stutter here looks like we've got a 1, 2, 3 in the 4, and there's reasonable expectation to get one more push up here to give us the 3rd here relative to this 2, right? So you can see here's the high probability zone. We come in a little shy of it right here, but now we're to and through, in fact. And so I think there's a reasonable estimate. Now, if we just do our algo pulls as we would. So if I work from this 2 to this 3, Right, here's my fourth here. I get this sideways action into my fourth. Here's my algo target right here. So this, reasonable expectation to think that we've got one more little push to get there. Nothing says we have to top there. We could get to and through. We could head up here. Here's the 2618 up here. That would be an extreme for this, but that's a contender as well. So right now it's kind of a wait and see on this, but I would maintain this count until I see something to prove otherwise. So looking at this now, I think we're 1, 2, 3, 4. We're trying to get the fifth in of the third. Right, very reasonable, nice technical trading. With the exception of the one wave, not terribly difficult to get an Elliott count on this. It's very doable. You don't have to struggle with any weird pattern or anomaly of an Elliott wave structure. Just pretty straightforward, right? So here's the big move. That's our third, sideways for the 4. We're trying to get a fifth up here. Oscillators, clearly here's the third, right? So here's our Elliott oscillator. Here's the big pump in the 3, come down. So we're trying to put in a 5. So clearly we would have divergence. Now we had the RSI get hot here. That might be just the pause as we go into the 4, looking for that last little push, but clear divergence. So we're attempting to put in some sort of an intermediate top here, or a top relative to this count on the hourly. So where's the next trade? Well, if we get this little push up for a 5, and we don't want to assume this is the top, but that's a candidate for the top. So just on the hypothetical, if we get that, well, now we've got a completed 5 wave. Oh, pardon me. I'm pulling now from the 2. We're completed 5 wave within the third, right? So here's the hypothetical top for the fifth of the third. So we're pulling now from the 2 here in blue, right? So we'd be looking here. So I'll put the wave on that just so it's clear. I didn't mean to screw you up there. So here 1, 2, putting in the 3, looking for the 4. So the next, and I've hypothesized the 5th here, right? So take note. So 1, 2, here's our clean 5th. We'd look for the 4. Stronger the market, we'd look for between the 23 and the 38. So here's our buy zone for the 4th. And, again, this is where you can use the oscillators. We'd like to see the oscillator come back to 0, ideally. You'd get that back to 0 before we get this last push. That's where the oscillators can be helpful. Maybe we get the RSI to drift lower into that oversold zone, but that would not be something that would keep me out of the trade. Although I'd like to see it, maybe below 50, of course. So if we do this here, so if that's our 5th, we come down for the 4th, then here's the setup for getting the move from the 4 to the 5. So you'd want to look at that and say, again, I'm hypothetical here. So let's say there's a front run on the 38. We'd look up here, would be our first target. Stop on the other side of the 50. 3.7 to 1, nothing wrong with that. That's nothing wrong with that. That's a perfectly valid technical, swing trade that, there's absolutely no reason not to take that trade. Now you got to be patient. Now we could have this. This could have already topped. It would surprise me, but it's possible. And, if you want to go down from the hourly to the 15-minute to try and dig into this count, there's nothing wrong with doing that. I don't make a habit of trying to go down that low, but it's there, right? So maybe an example here of the fractal nature of Elliott wave, right? It's waves within waves. So within this, as our 4th here, we can see we get a little 1, 2, 3, 4. We get a little 1, 2. So if I were to put the count on that, I would be, here's 1. I still got the wave on it. Here's 3. Here we're trying to put in the 4, and here would be the push up for the 5. So you could do a few things here. So we wick off the 1 high, as you would always. Just to know, now since we're in a 5th, we could have a diagonal, but just measuring now. Let me take that off because that cluster gets a little hard to see. So since I've got a 1, 2 here, I've got a potential 4. I've got a little 3 wave. We don't know that that's done yet. We don't know. This could be A, B. There may be one more push down here for that. So I just work from my 2 low here to my 3 high. Where am I in that zone? So I'm going to take this off just because the chart gets cluttered here. So now if we drill down into this, well, here's the pocket we'd be looking for, that 4th. Here's my 1. I've already gotten to the 3850 little zone here. So can I get one more little push up here from this zone here? that would top it out. Now, to me, that there's not enough meat in that trade to take the risk. There's just not enough risk reward. So even if I just, again, hypothetical, if that's my target, if I'm on the other side of the 2.6 to 1, it's just not enough there. Not enough in it. So I would wait. I would not take that trade myself. There's just not enough reward potential for the risk. So I'd be waiting for this to top out here, give me a clean pivot for my third, and then I'm looking for the fourth right now. So we got to go back, so that gets relative. So if we go here, so that's where this box now is no longer relative to this smaller count. We'd be looking for the fifth, and that box is relative to this pull here from the 2 up to the, remember I'm still hypothetical here, for my fifth to be topping, looking for this to come somewhere, 38 would be ideal. And then we have this big, cluster here of resistance, just a big window here of indecision, right? That's are we going higher? Are we going lower? So that's a natural place to look for support in this indecision zone rather than heading deeper down here where we didn't have that. Now you do have some, it's always a good idea to look left. See, do I have any prior resistance that might be there for some support? And I can see that. I can see that. So how could that come into play coming down here? Well, that's kind of interesting. Whether you're thinking Elliott wave or not, just prior resistance potentially there for some support. You can see, you can make the case that it was there before we pushed up here. So this would be a likely candidate here. So the front run on the 38 so that you get in, stop just on the other side of the 50 because you got to put it somewhere. You go down here to underneath the 6.1 to the 6.5. Now you've taken the trade to less than 2 to 1, right? So thus, that's how you have to look at it and say, okay, if I'm going to get more than 3 to 1, which would be a minimum requirement for me to take the trade, well, where's my stop have to be? Well, and if that's just barely, that's 3.7 to 1, is that still valid? Does it still make sense technically that I would give it that much room? Well, sure. I mean, we could very easily see the 4 come down to the 50, but that's as much as I'm going to give it to maintain the risk reward ratio. So if I take the stop here, so if I take that, we get the entry, and you take the stop, so be it. You reload. Well, what did something else happen? Has the count changed? It wouldn't invalidate this count if we go that deep. You just took a stop. Get used to it. That's trading, right? So you just it didn't play. So again, if it comes down here, if we get this and we get stopped out, you can't argue again. Well, sorry. You can't make the case that we no longer have a valid 5-wave structure. You just went at the 38 because that's a high probability zone. You took a stop. So does that mean you're gun shy the next time? No. This is where the subdivision here in the correction can be helpful. This is why that fractal nature and looking for these tendencies that we would want to see coming down into the fourth. So, so this is not what, so here's, okay, so this is a good example. So if the 4, you wouldn't take that, right? If you just had, you'd want to look for some indication of at least a 3-wave here. Do you take that? That's off that, that's kind of a judgment call that you have to make. Right? Does that look like that's enough to correct this? Well, you could make the case that could do it. If you had the ABC into the 38, yeah. So because of the abruptness of it, and you haven't had a clean ABC yet, you might. So this would be maybe smaller positioning here because there's nothing says that couldn't be it. That you couldn't have just an abrupt sell-off and then we go up for this 5th. Right, so if you had, let's see if I can do this. If you had something like this, so this is where it's a little tricky. So that could be, right, so this is why I wouldn't load up there. All right, so that could be the ABC into the 4th, but it also could be just the A wave of a larger correction. So this is why you got to be careful of this. So that could be just the A wave of the larger correction. Do you see that? So you could take this on the assumption that 3-wave, you could be looking either at a move into the B high, or it could be the move here all the way up to our algo target, assuming we're going to get up to that target. You aren't going to know. That's the bitch of it. You aren't going to know. So well, all you can do is high probability zone. I have it in ABC. Now then again, you could go down to the 15-minute and dig into that ABC and see if there's enough there to warrant it. But then there's a little bit of just looking at it, you know, the sort of the symmetry of the count. So this was quick. You know, you'd look for, maybe you could use Elliott's tendency here that he noticed that there would be alternation between simple and complex. So you can start using some nuance there, but you're not going to know until you see what happens here. Is this the fifth and we're into 4-5, or do we go up here and get a 3-wave that starts to roll over? Well, so what's the downside? If you caught this, right? Let me see if I can get that hot. So if you caught this, that little move, all right, you have not made a lot of money. But if we start to now look, it looks like it's going to roll over, and it doesn't look impulsive, and you get this, and we don't get that last little kick to take it up towards the fifth, as in 3-4 going up for the 5, and it just starts to roll over. Well, your entry was here. Right, so worst case is you stopped out at break even. I'd like to think you'd move your stop up, right, or at least reduce the risk. Because if you get a little 3-wave there, that would imply a B, which kind of tells you like this is setting up to maybe go deeper on this retracement. And now you got to reconsider this count over here. I can do that. It's a little tricky when you have the waves on them. So you have to be. So that's why you need to have be prepared for that. I don't know that you need an alternate count, but that's something you have to be looking for, right? So this simple, complex, more time. How much time does this take relative to this one? You know, it's not easy, right? So it's not supposed to be easy. If it was easy, we'd all be trading from our yachts in the south of France. It's not easy. So, you know, welcome to trading. What's it going to be? You aren't going to know there until you see this. But if you get that little push up, right? You know, so think of as a trader, I've got a low risk entry here with a reasonable stop. My worst case here is that if I get that, I've got a 3-to-1. If I move up and I get a B and it rolls over, I'm out at a scratch. And I've got a chance to re-enter here on the assumption that I've got a deeper retracement. And I have the kind of 3-wave structure with the subdivision that I want to see available to me. So now I'm in this. Now look what that does though. If you got stopped out on the first one, let's say it's a scratch. Now you've got a deeper trade. So now you're here at the 50 with a stop on the other side of the 6.5. Now you got 4.37 to 1 to get up to that target because the algo target didn't move, right? The first one you bought it on the 38. Now you're buying it at the 50, stop on the other side of the 65. Algo target hasn't moved. Now you got 4.3 to 1. So, you know, maybe you took a break even, small loser, reload. Still valid. You still have to take that. Well, you know, I have to take it. I would take it. Put it that way. All right, guys, that's a very tradable market. You know, it's one. You know, if you're not comfortable trading Bitcoin, you know, this is a good way to because they're moving very, very much in tandem. Very close, not exactly, but you know, they're very technical. You know, the algos are all over it, so there's a chance to get in behind them. That's all we're trying to do. All right, guys, I'll wrap it there.